What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dr. Vincent Esposito, and today we're going to be talking about what to do when you have food intolerances. But before we get to that, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel below. Coming out with videos every week, everything health, nutrition, wellness, longevity, plant-based nutrition, plant-based recipes, gut health, you name that, it's here. But I'll stop wasting your time. Let's hop right into the video. So I've used this analogy before. If you've listened to our podcast, The Art of Eating, we call it the stress bucket. Again, it's not something we came up with, but it's a good analogy for this. So when we're talking about gut health or stress in general, we like using this stress bucket. So essentially, think of it kind of like a Gatorade bucket with a nozzle on the bottom. So if everything's functioning properly, you add water to the bucket, but then it's able to be released through the plug on the bottom. Now, if we're going under stress, if we're constantly attacking our bodies with histamines and oxalates, sulfur type materials, if we're under a great deal of stress, if we're not sleeping properly, if there's adrenal fatigue, anything like this, this can cause our bucket to fill up, but it'll also gum up the bottom plug, meaning that the water can't get out. And once that bucket fills up, that's when all sorts of symptoms can occur, everything from autoimmune diseases to poor gut health, to leaky gut, to anxiety, depression. The list is pretty much endless when it comes to that. And this applies to food sensitivities as well. So if you are sensitive to certain types of foods, this could also clog up that tap on the bottom, which could lead for that whole entire bucket to overflow. So in a healthy gut, that tap is working properly. We're able to excrete all the toxins we need. This is usually done via stool or urine, or excreted in the vial and then eventually eliminated. And again, when that tap is clogged up, this is when you start to feel those symptoms, and it could be, again, brain fog, insomnia, things like that. One important thing to note when we talk about food sensitivities is this cascading effect. So sometimes you might consume a food and not necessarily feel any symptoms until a day later, 2 days later, sometimes even 3 days later. And unless you're keeping track of what you're eating via food diary or food logging, it's going to be really difficult to isolate what might be causing the issue. So that's something I recommend up front for anyone I work with. Now, this cascading effect could lead to kind of poor habits long-term and ultra-restrictive diets, which are not necessarily ideal for gut health and optimizing your overall health going forward. And once that list is down to a small group of foods, you know that there's some issues going on. So ultimately, we want to avoid narrowing our diet down to a few foods, because this will only make the problem worse, as there will be less gut diversity, gut bacteria diversity. And again, this just becomes a vicious cycle. And the goal again is to optimize gut diversity and fix any leaky gut or issues that we will get into now. So again, using that bucket analogy, if you happen to be struggling with food intolerances, it's really important to get to the root cause of that problem, and we're gonna go over some of those things you can do. So first and primarily, you want to establish whatever that root cause is, and it can be anything from a parasite to gut bacteria overgrowth. It could be a gut infection. It could be low stomach acid, low pancreatic enzyme release. It could be any one of these things that are causing the leaky gut, but it's really important that you find what the driver is for leaky gut so that you can fix it going forward. Second, and this will be key, although it's important to realize that this is not forever, but you are going to want to eliminate the foods that are causing the issues for a short period of time. And again, this can be anything from gluten, soy, or dairy to things like foods that are high in histamines, or oxalates in rare cases where it's things like spinach or Swiss chard or beets that could be causing the problem. But again, it's really important to identify that and eliminate them for the short period of time while you're going through the treatment protocols, and then we will slowly reintroduce these foods. Because again, it's really important to understand that if I'm going to fall apart if I have a beet, then that's not necessarily fixing the problem, it's avoiding it altogether. So once we have these symptoms under control, it's time to reintroduce what might not have been there. And this could be, again, low stomach acid levels. This could be poor pancreatic enzyme release. If you can handle probiotics, this would be the time to take probiotics so you can reintroduce a wide array of gut bacteria, because again, we want a lot of diversity in the microbiome. When there's low amounts of diversity, this tends to lead to general health problems. And again, if there are some sort of infections, we can use some antimicrobial herbs that are very helpful, but again, you should work with someone to figure out what those are. It's also really important to note that if you are to take these supplements, they are not going to be forever. They are only for the amount of time that you are undergoing the treatment. And then after that, they should be discontinued once everything is fixed. And then once you've taken care of the infection or underlying cause, it's time to repair the gut. You can use that using something like L-glutamine or aloe. Antioxidants like vitamin C are crucial for this part of treatment as well. Now, that's kind of the basic protocol in terms of what to do if you happen to be suffering from food intolerances, if they're causing a variety of issues we mentioned earlier. So let's go over a couple of things that you should not do. The first thing is to not guess at what your problems are. Assuming you have a disease where you have no evidence that it might exist could lead to you making the problem worse in the long run. And this is where things like cleanses and detoxes come into mind. If you are just randomly throwing supplements at a problem and you don't know necessarily what that problem is, you will often end up doing nothing in the long term, or perhaps even make the original problem worse. I see this very often. People tend to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on supplements they might not even need, when often if you could just identify the problem in the first place and treat it appropriately, it will save you time and money. Speaking of things not to do, one thing that's really important, particularly if you have food intolerances, is don't go on a water fast or a juice fast. Generally, if you're suffering from food intolerances, this is due to poor microbe diversity in the gut. And if you are going to fast, that is simply going to starve more bacteria off, making the whole problem worse in the first place. So please don't go on a water fast unchecked if you are not working with someone and doing so under the proper supervision, especially if you're going through or suffering from food intolerances. Oftentimes, this can just make things worse and you'll be starting from zero again and potentially going on that vicious cycle further and further downhill. So again, just to reiterate, if you are suffering from food intolerances, it's really important to identify what's going on and then treating it appropriately. Do not randomly guess and throw certain supplements at a problem that could potentially just make the whole situation worse, or do nothing, in which case you are just throwing money away. Again, if you are just going to avoid foods indefinitely going forward, you are simply just avoiding the problem. You're not fixing the root cause. So it's really important to find what that root cause is and manage it appropriately. Again, if you do this properly, this whole cycle can take roughly 2 to 3 months to fix if you follow it properly. And that's the gist of today's video. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe below. Again, coming out with videos every week. Nutrition, health, wellness, plant-based recipes, gut health, you name it, it's on this channel. So I hope you enjoy that here. Let's chat in the comments below if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And until next time, take care.